It's a busy season for these farmers in Bandudi village in Purulia district of West Bengal. The scorching heat barely hampers the excitement of an eagerly awaited mango harvest. And this is no ordinary harvest for many reasons. To begin with, these are small farmers who could have never imagined to work in their own orchards. They are still learning the nuances of handling a mango crop. It's a first for them. Moreover, this sprawling stretch of orchards is flourishing on what used to be an endless terrain of barren land a few years ago. And last but not the least, this is perhaps the most outstanding symbol of Bandudi's pride that has slowly risen from poverty to self-sufficiency.
আমাদের এই জায়গাটা মানে ফাঁকা মাঠ পড়েছিল, পাথরিয়া জায়গা, কোনো এখানে চাষাবাদ হতো না। এখানের মানুষগুলা মানে গরিব মানুষ, বেশিরভাগ মানুষ গরিব, মানে কাজের অভাবে মানুষকে এখানে ওখানে ছুটতে হতো। আমরা ধারণাও করতে পারি না যে আমাদের এই পাথরিয়া জায়গায় এরকম আম গাছ হবে বা এত সুন্দর জিনিসটা গড়ে উঠবে। আম গাছে আমার 100টা গাছ আছে, একদিন 100টা গাছে আমার ধরুন 100,000ও আসতে পারে।
So what changed the destiny of Bandudi and that of its farmers? And how exactly did it happen? Watch these images of Bandudi from yesteryears. This was a village largely marked by vast stretches of degraded land. But today, this is what it has transformed into. Glimpses from the past and present tell an incredible story of change. And it all started when a voluntary organization called Pradhan brought together nearly 350 small and marginal farmers under a watershed program. When it started work, the idea was simple.
In this particular part of our country, every step, every square meter of land gets about 1,000 to 1,500 kg of water, 1 ton to 1.5 ton of water every year. But still our farmers fail to reap a crop. Converting that rain and this much of potential in soil, and we get 12-month bright sunshine. So what else we need to produce biomass? That was the thinking. How to use this huge amount of water and this lands to produce something which will meet the need of the farmers here, who are very poor anyway.
The initiative in Purulia became a testing ground for a larger vision that Pradhan had set for itself. It was to find solutions of livelihood for the vast number of poor living in the agro-climatic zone 7 of the country, comprising the southwestern districts of West Bengal, Jharkhand, non-coastal Orissa, Chhattisgarh, and a few districts in eastern Madhya Pradesh and eastern Maharashtra. This zone is characterized by its undulating and hilly terrain, high rainfall, low productivity agriculture, and widespread poverty. Pradhan realized that if it were to attempt to eradicate poverty from this region, its approach to the watershed program will have to be different.
What has happened traditionally, watershed management has been thought of in terms of conservation of rainwater, conservation of soil. And it has basically meant building check dams in a few places and things of that nature. One wants to improve agriculture production, one needs to go beyond the traditional conservation ideas. One is interested in harvesting water in such a way that it produces goods for the people. It produces crops for the people.
Purulia's seemingly difficult terrain was used to its advantage. The undulating land was dealt with in broadly 3 categories. The dry uplands with shallow soil cover, prone to high erosion by rainfall. The midlands with deeper soils and low water holding capacity. And the lowlands or valleys with the deepest soils and good moisture holding capacity. A whole gamut of techniques was put to use to catch rainwater at every step across these terrains.
What one is talking about in the Purulia approach is that try to manage the resources at a micro level, at the level of each field, each piece of land, conserve the water there itself, and develop a farming system, a land use, which will ensure that the water captured locally is used productively. So that is best done if you conserve it, especially in these terrains. If you conserve it in each piece of land as close to the plant as possible.
Innovation was the name of the game. To begin with, several interventions were used to develop the fallow and rocky uplands. As rainwater washed away the thin topsoil, the uplands were left behind dotted with huge boulders. Poor percolation of rainwater in the uplands resulted in poor soil moisture of the entire landscape. To treat these, a unique technique to harvest rainwater, called the 30-40 model, was adopted. The technique calls for digging small pits across the uplands. The earth that is dug out is used to make bunds that run 40 feet across and 30 feet along the slope. As rainwater falls on this patch, it is checked by the bunds at frequent intervals. Unable to run off, it accumulates in the pits and percolates down, increasing the moisture regime of the entire landscape. As soil erosion was checked, the rejuvenated uplands were ready for cultivation. New livelihood opportunities were introduced for the farmers. As the uplands needed permanent vegetation, they were brought under forestry and horticulture. Small farmers like Tipu and Dashrath, who remained idle in the lean months before the harvesting season, have found a new vocation. They have been trained to rear silkworms on Arjun trees that were planted in their uplands. Host for tussar silkworms, Arjun is a hardy tree that grows well in shallow soils on dry lands. Cocoons from these have fetched farmers like Tipu a sum of 3,000 rupees in just 2 months. Farmers like Deenbandhu grew barely a few vegetables in their uplands. To them, the idea of cultivating mangoes here was quite strange. In the flat patches of the uplands with better soil cover, a few farmers reluctantly planted mangoes. After the first harvest that has brought them 5,000 rupees each, they know it was a risk worth taking. Many other poor farmers who lived from one meal to another are now planning ahead with hope. They have opted to plant teak in the uplands. If nurtured for the next 15 years, these teak plantations will fetch a good sum of money. And this patch of rocky upland would possibly turn into a dense teak forest. Elsewhere in the uplands, farmers like Nepal Baske have benefited from cultivating their homesteads. This was made possible by creating small water harvesting tanks called hapas near their homestead. Nepal earlier grew maize worth a paltry 400 rupees on this land. Now with a new source of irrigation, he is growing tomatoes worth 5,000 rupees. His wife Urmila, who was earlier forced to leave home with him to search for wage labor, now looks after the lemon orchard in the backyard of their home. In the remaining patches, a kind of grass called sabai was planted to regenerate the uplands. Many farmers use it as a raw material for making ropes for domestic use and also sell it commercially. In the Midlands, a technique called the 5% model proved a lifesaver for the paddy farmers. Pradhan convinced a few of them to spare 5% of their paddy fields to make deep pits which could store excess rainwater. The idea was that every plot should have its own water body that holds rainwater, which otherwise flows out as runoff. Initially reluctant to spare their land, farmers soon realized its worth. When the rains failed during the critical paddy flowering period in September, the stored water in the 5% pits saved their entire crop. In the lowlands, an alternative technique of rice farming called the System of Rice Intensification or SRI became hugely popular with the farmers. Among its greatest proponents are Subhadra Murmu and her husband Purnachand. Under SRI, their paddy yield has tripled from just 4 to 12 quintals. Brimming with confidence, Subhadra now trains farmers from other villages in this simple technique.
আমি দিদি দাদারাকে এরকম আমি বলিয়েছিলি যে তোরা এরকম করো। আগে আমরা ভয় করিয়েছিলি যে একটা একটা ধান লাগালে হবে না নাই হবে ভয় করিয়েছিলি। একটা একটা ধান লাগালি আমরা, তো দেখলি যে আমাদের ধান মানে দবড় হয়ে গেল। তখন বলছি নাই হবে কি, দিদিরা দাদারা আসিয়েছিল, অনেক অনেক দাদা দিদিরা আসিয়েছিল দেখতে আমার ক্ষেতকে। তখন দিদি দাদারাকে আমি বলিয়ে দিলি যে এরকম তোরা এরকম করো, লাগা, ভয় করো না। দিদি এরকম ধান লাগালি, ক্ষেতটাকে বলছে খিল করলিস, তো বলছি খিল হবে তো হবে, এক বছরেই হবে আমার, একবার দেখবই।
Nearly 65 farmers in Bandudi are now practicing SRI. As it uses 1/15th the quantity of seeds required in conventional paddy crops, farmers save costs substantially. SRI needs young seedlings of just 8 to 10 days. Contrary to the conventional practice of growing paddy under standing water, SRI requires alternate wetting and drying of the crops. In a water-stressed zone, this is a boon for the farmers. Productivity in some fields has shot up by nearly 200%. The big picture of Bandudi as it is today has emerged from all these micro-initiatives. Across its large stretches of undulating terrain, innovating with new methods of conserving rainwater, introducing new crops and practices, and bringing in better farming techniques. Every small initiative has worked towards turning around the ecology of Bandudi and with it, the livelihoods of its farmers. After almost a decade of hard work, the results are evident in the stories of hope that farmers like Subhadra in Nepal share with others.
এখানে মানুষের পরিবর্তন হয়েছে, কাজ পেয়েছে, কাজ পাচ্ছে এবং জমিতে চাষ করছে। মানে এখানে প্রায় 12 মাসের খাবার মোটামুটি হয়ে গেছে, এরকম হয়ে গেছে আর কি। এখনও আবার হবে, তো একটু সময় লাগবে আর কি। তো এখানে আগে যেভাবে বাইরে কাজ করতে যাচ্ছিল সেটা বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে।
Pradhan continues to mobilize farmers in many new villages. But it's never easy. Just as they started in Bandudi, it means meticulous planning with every family on each plot of land in every new hamlet.
It needed a lot of discussion, exposure, picking up example from their own experience, and then interpreting it in the new language. If I first go out and sit on a piece of wasteland and ask them what can be done here, they say nothing can be done. Bringing these communities to a level of initiative when they can think that these activities would actually benefit them, and in the for a long term, that's the most difficult thing. And in addition, most important, one of the most important things is also bearing the cost of it. If we fail to mobilize minimum investment required to develop resources, we can expect these poor people to invest their surplus, which is hardly there.
The investments that are available presently for watershed development from the government are about 6,000 rupees per hectare. That is not enough for carrying out the extensive landscape development that is being promoted in places like Purulia. These are expensive investments, and these cannot be afforded by poor people on their own. Investment required today would be in the range of 15 to 20,000 rupees per hectare. Some cases it may even be 25,000 rupees per hectare. This is a fraction of the investment that is made in irrigation, in large scale irrigation. The investments in large scale irrigation presently are in the range of more than a lakh of rupees per hectare. If you can make these kinds of investments in large scale irrigation, why can't you make a much smaller amount of investment in case of terrains where large scale irrigation is not possible?
If Purulia's story is to be replicated widely, it calls for a major shift in perceptions and policies. Watershed programs will have to work towards creating livelihoods for the rural poor. All stakeholders, including the government, the financial institutions, and committed NGOs, will have to join hands to achieve the goal of ending poverty and hunger in rural India.